So just want to thank you guys for being here. Obviously, we're to the point in session, you're seeing our budget bills move forward. The bill, we do not have necessarily an overall budget target agreement with the Senate and the governor, but what you're seeing in our line items is where the House is at this point. We recognize there's probably middle ground to be found with the Senate and with the governor, but I would say that property taxes, and that's one of the things I want to talk about today, is consuming a lot of what's going on as far as our conversations between the House, Senate, and the governor. So I'll open it up to any other questions, and then I'll give you guys an update.
We're gonna have a printout for you.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a handout here. That's part of why I'm not leading with it.
If you have other questions than property taxes to start, we can
full news. I literally just came from caucus up the stairs, and I'm gonna share with you what I just shared with the caucus. Is why I don't have that for you. I wasn't gonna share it before they were aware of it.
Okay, well the suspense is killing me, but tell us about the governor's immigration bill. It's going to a conference committee. That doesn't happen a lot with Republicans in control of both chambers. What's important to you in that, and what are you hoping to see of it?
Yeah, I've had conversations with the Senate. I think we're in a position where we'll find resolution. Obviously, we were a little disappointed to see that bill didn't advance, but since that happened over in the Senate, we've had productive conversations. I feel, won't speak for the Senate, but in those conversations, I think we will be able to find resolution. I'm pretty confident in that. So,
which pieces are are the must-haves?
At this point, I'll let the conference committee decide what it is. I know going into the conference, both sides feel confident that we'll find resolution.
So if you can, you're super confident on his question that that's going to happen before you go home. Obviously, you think property tax for sure is going to happen. Are you equally as confident that there will be some eminent domain agreement before you go home, or is that still a while?
Well, I know I'm a broken record, but continue to stand here towards the end of session, waiting to see some sort of action from the Senate. Depending upon what the Senate does over there, whether their members do things, I don't know what that looks like from their perspective. We've continued to have conversations amongst ourselves. Our members are talking to members of the Senate to see if there's a place where there's breakthrough, but obviously here we stand right at the end, and there isn't at this point. So we would love to see that be a part of this conversation, but again, we're trying to weigh, do we want to be in a position where we're negotiating against ourselves and weaken a position that we feel is extremely strong, and so Iowans, at least, if nothing happens, they at least leave here knowing where we stand on this issue from the standpoint of multiple votes in our caucus. And I continue to say this, and I just can't say it enough. We have tried so many different approaches to this. I don't think the House is the one that's been unwilling to offer up different ideas and solutions.
When is the last time you and Senator Clemish sat at a table together and talked about that bill, that policy specifically, and traded your caucus's perspectives?
It's hard for me to tell all the days run together. In the last couple weeks, I would say that we've had conversations about, is there a potential path out there, but obviously, we haven't made any progress.
The abortion medication bill is moving through appropriations today. Is that another thing you plan on bringing up before session?
So we haven't caucused on it as a full caucus in depth. I will continue to say that I expect that to come before the House at some point before we leave here. But you guys always know I'm not going to get totally out in front of the caucus, but I would say that as of right now, I kind of expect that to at least, it will get caucused on and probably move to the floor.
Do you know if Representative Dieken will file his amendment on that bill again and give you guys something to think about as far as whether to vote on that or not?
Yeah, I don't know for sure whether or not that will happen. I would just say I'm not going to assume anything. I think it's a possibility. Yes.
On that bill, have you guys talked to the Senate at all? Is that something that they're willing to bring up, or are you guys just focusing on that?
As far as because of the amendment, or just the bill itself? Just the bill itself. My understanding is the members have had conversations. A lot of the pro-life groups have been having conversations over there. I won't speak for what the Senate is going to do with it, but I don't think we've been given any messages that it's a non-starter. So I don't think that's the case.
So far, the criminal sentencing bill, the 3 strikes bill, it got out of committee in the Senate, hasn't come to the floor. How important is it to you and your caucus that the Senate do something to enhance criminal sentencing?
Yeah. We feel, obviously, it was one of the things that we laid out before session. Those conversations are actually continuing to happen. Never make guarantees in this place. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to find some level of resolution. We've had a willingness to compromise if the Senate would want us to bring us something. Obviously, they've had some concerns. They moved it, so we appreciated that. But I feel like that's something that I think the members can work out along with myself and the leader over there. I think we'll be able to find some level of resolution, but it still is a priority for the caucus. I'm gonna go to this, I don't wanna cut anybody off, and if we have time at the end. So this is,
You need one?
no, we'll go with what I got.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
I don't know how exciting it, so you always build, I hate to have high expectations. I always like to go into everything right here, ground level, sand farmer expectations, and outperform.
Good call. My marriage has been like that.
Okay, so what you have before here is what I just presented to the caucus. This is what we're gonna file today, and we consider, and I consider, this to be a extremely reasonable compromise, and as you look through it, and I can walk through it, as you look at it and walk through it, this incorporates, keep in mind, our bill, the main 2 points we had in our bill was certainty and easy to understand. I think this still fits within that framework, but also includes several pieces that the governor and the Senate, and they're aware of this. I've made the governor aware of this, and I've made the Senate aware of this, that we were going to be filing this amendment today, and I've walked them both through what the plan would be, and this has been a part of our conversation. I think if you look at what the House is willing to propose here, and including these changes, this is a serious step forward in the right direction, and this is something that should be taken very seriously as a potential compromise. It would continue to have the 2% revenue limitation. If you remember, the SAVE piece that is a piece from the governor that she included in her original bill. If you see here, we'd be making some slight changes to that. We changed our runway a little bit from the bill we had in our bill that came out of the House Ways and Means Committee. We took the cap up to 25 million by 2030-31, so that would be a change from our current amendment to try to help accommodate some of the concerns, or not necessarily concerns, but questions we were getting in caucus. As you look below, we continue to have a piece of the Senate, or the governor's language on the SBRC language, that if a school district is above 35% in reserves, if they want more taxing authority, they would not be allowed to get more taxing authority above 35% reserves. Currently, the system, if you request more taxing authority, it is automatically granted. That was a piece we incorporated from the governor. Oop, I just covered up. Here, I'm gonna lay this right on Aaron's microphone, so get rid of that fuzzy thing off of here. You gotta have a next one, or a better one. This piece right here, I think, shows a willingness on the House's perspective for a willingness to compromise. Originally in our bill, we just had that $25,000 exemption. We changed that to up 10% up to $25,000. The governor and the Senate in their bills wanted to look at the credits that currently exist in the state. The homestead credit, we would incorporate into this, we would make that an exemption, we would triple that up to $15,000. That $175 million that currently funds that credit, we would use that to buy down the 540 levy. So within that formula, I just kind of speculate, our goal would be that gets us probably buying that thing down, hopefully in the 5 to even potentially below 5. We're trying to get the final runs on what that would mean. But again, by eliminating the homestead credit, turning it into an exemption, we would buy down the 540 levy. The reason for doing that is multiple. It provides immediate relief, but it applies to all classes of property. And so I think that that's extremely important in this. Not only if we focused on residential, but that 540 would apply to all classes of property. And again, one more thing that was not in our original plan that we moved off of where we wanted to be from just a pure exemption, not dealing with the credits, we would keep in place the elderly, disabled, and veteran credit. By doing that, some of the other bills in the building have eliminated all of the credits. We just chose the homestead to do that. Let's see, it keeps the assessor's language, shifts the burden of proof. I think that's a really big deal in this conversation right now as Iowans see record assessments. They have to go, and I just had a constituent come to me and walk me through what he did with his local assessor's office and felt that there needed to be a change. We would keep the business property tax accrual. Our bill had an increase to the exemption in the business property tax credit. We're going back down to that $150,000, and we would use that money to put into the taxpayer relief fund to the tune of about $125 million. Again, we've done a lot of tax benefits for what we would consider our business and industry in the state. This helps us to make sure that we can continue to do those things to be supportive. We have our transparency language, should be very similar to what our last bill would be. This piece is a change to something that we heard from our caucus in the 35% buy down, or excuse me, if local governments have over a 35% ending balance, if they have over 35, if they're over 35% reserves in their reserve balance, the bill we had before would make them spend that down. As we talked about that, we think the 35% is the right thing to do, but at the same time, you have a lot of counties and local governments that have been doing the right thing by saving up for projects or being able to save for maybe infrastructure projects. So what we would be creating in this amendment is we feel is a good compromise that also is beneficial to local governments, that we believe 35% should be your cap. But at the same time, if you're over that and you've been doing it the right way, you can put that in a protected fund for infrastructure, and it would not apply to your 35%. And that way we're also satisfying those governments that I think are doing it the right way, or governments that want to save up to make sure, okay, you're missing the most breaking news that's ever happened in this building right now. I kid. Yeah, no. So again, we're making sure those governments can still save money to want to do major investments in their infrastructure. Again, most of the rest of this is going to be fairly similar. Our TIF language is extremely similar, very few changes in that TIF language that we have in there. We felt strongly that we need to continue to provide tools for our local governments to be able to use for economic growth, but at the same time recognizing that things like the backfills and some other things do need to be modified, and the system hasn't been modified for so long. So again, that's one more example of something that the governor and the Senate has felt extremely important to have as part of their bill. And then just the last few things would just be bills, things that are already in our bill, looking at the emergency levy, that they could increase that with a vote, they could double it, as well as the first-time home buyers accounts. So my position on this is such that from the House's perspective, we've incorporated several pieces that both the Senate and the governor wanted to have. We feel that there needs to be movement towards finding a compromise. We continue to say to Iowans that we're going to accomplish that. And from the beginning of this, we knew that there would have to be movement. We feel by incorporating many of these changes that we've made a good faith effort and puts us in a position where I don't see how this does not bring us closer to an agreement, and I'd be disappointed if it didn't. So with that, we do other questions, but I want to focus on this for now, if we could.
I know you talked about to try to be more simplistic with this. No disrespect, but it's still complicated.
Compared to some other proposals
yeah,
that might
for
be
sure.
out there, I think it's still extremely simple.
For those watching, the bottom line is they want to know, who, if anybody, will see property taxes decline, or should the expectation be this limits potential future increase?
Yeah,
Like,
so
what's the fair answer?
you must have been sitting in caucus. I just answered this. So my prep was with the whole caucus today on this. So I think there's two factors at play here. The 2% revenue cap is the long-term curve that changes this. So if anyone says we have to change the system, not every bill in this building changes the system. It reshuffles the deck chairs, but it does not change the system in entirety. The 2% cap is what brings that change into place on its own. So if you're the taxpayer at home, does that do anything immediately today? Not necessarily. It does change our local government. Thanks though. So the 2% is that piece. I'll try to point out in here what I would point to if I was talking at home to a constituent. The save piece, which would be immediate relief from the standpoint of currently that statewide penalty that's distributed across the state is used at about a rate of 7% for property tax relief. I was here and voted for that 100 years ago, and that was one of the reasons like why the Farm Bureau engaged on it. They said that should be used for property tax. Well, here we are almost 20 years ago and we're still under 10%. So this speeds up the timeline, brings us up to 25%. So that right there will be a reduction for property taxpayers in each of the communities. I would also say that by looking at going from the credit to an exemption and using that to buy down the 540, that is a significant relief for all property taxpayers that pay that. That's uniform across the state for everyone when it comes to that amount. So our ability to buy that dollar amount down, and also changing this to an exemption. Our original goal of our first bill was set to say that Iowans should not be paying on every dollar of their property, and that was why we had the 10% up to $25,000. This gets us in a position where we're still trying to work towards that, of saying we recognize that over the last 5 years your assessments have drastically increased. We want to take some of that value of what you're taxed out of. So I would say between the 540, the save, and the slowing of the growth by the 2% and limiting that curve, those are just immediate things that I see that completely change the current dynamic of what we have.
I'm gonna.
Here we go. I'm ready, Stephen.
At
Whatever.
risk, well, I'm not. At risk of sounding stupid, so buying down the 540 and turning that into an exemption, does that mean that there's like money coming out of the system in terms of Like, is that gonna be on local governments to make up that
Yes.
difference?
So anytime you did an exemption, and even our original bill would have had an exemption that takes value off of the tax base from the local government. So what I felt strongly about my conversations with the Senate and the governor, that if we were gonna look at going from, because that was one of the big sticking points, is we weren't looking at the credit, we were just doing an exemption. So I said, we'd be willing to do that, but to do that and take that credit offline, which yes, that is absorbed at the local level, that money needs to be used for benefiting the 540 buy down versus just being some sort of a benefit to the state. So I would argue from the standpoint of, while that is a reduction to the local governments, it is going to be used to benefit the property taxpayer. It isn't floating back into the state, because that's currently a general fund appropriation for that credit in the standings. So the money's not coming back to us, we're gonna flow it back out through the buy down of the 540.
Two things that are in the Senate bill that are not in here: gas tax increase and some kind of broad-based relief for people age 65 and up. Are those non-starters for your caucus? Is that why those are not here?
Yeah, I should have said that, so thanks for asking that, Laura. So I would say we've been caucusing on the gas tax piece. The reason I didn't include it at this point, because I don't know if we have a resolution. I'm not saying our caucus is 100% aligned with this, that's not what I'm saying. I wasn't sure I was in a position to be able to put something in until I knew what it looks like. I've been open with the Senate and with the governor. We are still considering what a path forward may look like. I recognize that's important to others in the building, so I'm not ignorant to the fact that we need to look at it. I just don't know if we're in a position for resolution on that. What I would say though, in our exemption in here, and I think I said this, but I can't remember now that I've done this twice. So when we take that homestead credit away, we still are leaving the senior credit in place. Some of the other bills eliminated the senior credit and then did some of those other freezes and other mechanisms. We felt by eliminating the homestead credit, that will apply to all homesteads, but also the additional benefit that will be in the bill is we would leave the elderly, disabled, and veteran in place. So I would say that it's kind of a bringing of the two concepts together. Broad-based for all residential property, at the same time leaving that protection in for seniors and I.
Okay, and one more question. The Senate bill tax says if you live in your home, you shouldn't be taxed the same as if you own a home for an investment. So I'm looking at this, the home I live in, so I'm gonna get a triple new homestead exemption. If I own my neighbor's home as an investment, what reduction, or am I getting any break on that?
My understanding, it would be your residential property. I would have to, let me double check on how that would exactly work. I'm pretty sure it's your residential homestead. I think that's why we use the definition of homestead.
So this does treat residential property differently depending on whether it's an investment or whether you actually live there.
I want to get clarification before I say something and make myself look stupid. That's one thing
Okay.
I think it's homestead residential from the standpoint of your individual one. I just need to get clarification.
Okay.
So you talked a little bit about affecting all classes of property. I've heard some concerns that perhaps the Senate proposal, the changes to multi-residential, would result in rent increases. Is that a concern you're hearing, and how seriously are you taking that?
Yes, that's a concern I've been hearing. That's a concern that was brought up in caucus. That's why we decided not to include that within this potential compromise with, I think, around 1/3 of Iowans. I don't think we want to be in a position where we're going to have to pass those costs along. Even if the full cost is not passed along, I don't see how it doesn't potentially result in that. And that's why, as a caucus, we've been pretty set on, again, keeping it simple from the standpoint of, and now, while Dave can't keep up to speed with me, I know you can, Stephen, on this. But that's why we've said homestead, broad-based. We've left those elderly credits in place. We've tried to keep it from a standpoint of not going through and just, again, taking the current system and just changing it to a new system, really making fundamental changes. And our objective this entire time is not to have certain classes be winners and losers. I think I've been saying that since even before session. We want to apply it to all residential property, and with this 540 shift in there, it actually goes beyond the impact, or the 540 buy down actually goes beyond even residential at this point. Okay, come on, you gotta have something. You walked in halfway through here.
I know, halfway through.
I'm not picking on you. No, you don't have it. I'm just teasing. Do you guys have anything else on this?
You don't have the estimates for the 540 buy down or any of the other parts?
Here's what I can tell you. The credit to exemption is 175 million. My rough estimate at this point, so if I'm wrong, you guys can't say next week I lied. You have full disclosure. We think that's in the range from 25 to 30 million, or excuse me, 175 million, 25 to 30 million of that will go to make sure you fully fund the backfill to the schools. And so that kind of puts us, you know, in that 140 to 50 $1 million range. But again, I will try to get you that as soon as we have a little more clarity on that. But it will be a significant buy down in the 540.
I'll ask the very obviously soundbite quote fishing question. You walking down the street and someone recognizes you, say, I heard about your property tax proposal latest. Is it going to save me money? What's it do? What's your? You've got a meeting in 30 seconds. What's your?
Yeah, if you wanted me in a 30-second interaction at a door to tell you what this bill truly does, it provides release for you as the property taxpayer from the standpoint of exempting the value of your property. At the same time, we're exempting some of your property, we're buying down your 540 levy. At the same time, we're making sure your local government can grow at a rate that's sustainable to you. We always talk about inflation and how it impacts the government. We believe our bill provides certainty for you as a taxpayer, and the certainty that it provides is for you to be the one that doesn't always have to be on the hook. So that would kind of be my, are you voting for me now, Aaron? No, I want to know if you're going to put me on the
Not
spot.
in your district.
Yeah.
Do you think the governor and the Senate will agree to this, or are you expecting more amendments to be made?
Yeah. Oh, I don't think we're in a position, just to be clear, I'm not coming here to say that this is the compromise. We want to continue we're more than happy to engage in all the pieces of it. All I want everyone to see here from the standpoint of you guys and Iowans at home that are listening and watching is that this is a tremendous move forward towards incorporating many facets of other bills. And in fact, I would even argue there was only a few pieces that that we took from our original bill. Most of this is incorporated from the Senate and the governor's plan to try to find that level of compromise. So I don't stand here thinking this is the final product, but I also don't see how this is not a step in the right direction. And anyone that says this is not a real proposed compromise, I would completely disagree to say they're not really trying to find resolution.
All right, let's call it there.
Yeah. Plus, we got to go anyway.
Now that we know Aaron's voting for me, I'm out of here.